Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Centerville Grace podcast, where every single week we do our very best to help you, our church family, dive deeper into community to make sure that no one walks alone. Gentlemen, how we feeling on this fine Monday afternoon?
We're doing great, man. It's Monday. It's a nice day out. Love it.
Dust, how was the rest of your Sunday, Monday deal? You feeling good?
I'm feeling good. I always feel like a Monday is a Monday, but this is a beautiful Monday and the sun is shining and we're still in sort of summer/fall because Ohio doesn't know what season it is.
Fake summer is what I call it. Fake
Yeah.
summer. Fake summer. Yeah, I love it. We got some exciting things happening in the life of the church. Kicks off this week on Wednesday. Dusty, why don't you tell everybody what's happening this Wednesday and why they should be there?
Yeah. So this Wednesday we have our vision night. That is something we've kind of gotten the habit of doing about once a year. That really talks about why we do what we do as a church, along with casting vision as for the remainder of this year and into 2026. I'm a firm believer, as I know you guys are, that vision and mission kind of drive everything we do. And the more clear we can be with what our mission and vision is and how we're executing that and what we're seeing in terms of traction and momentum in the church are great things for us to celebrate and to give you an idea of, hey, this is where we're going. Here's how we're mobilizing forward. And here's where we're seeing the kingdom at work. So it's a night you will not want to miss if you like all those kinds of conversations.
And in terms of what people should expect with their kids and food and all of that stuff, it starts at 6:30, goes till 8. What are we doing with the kiddos?
Yeah, so I believe, Dave, I'm looking over at you. Did we do childcare for this one? I think we're doing childcare for this. But all ages are welcome in the room. Regardless, we're going to have the tables set up. There is going to be light refreshments and snacks/desserts available. So if you're thinking of, what does the night feel like? Think of it like a warm, casual conversation among family members.
It's good. That sounds
I like
nice.
that. Yeah.
Some apple cider maybe and a
Yeah.
bonfire. That'd be nice.
Yeah, so now you guys are on board. Now you're both going to be there because of that. That's why.
Yep, that's it.
Sure.
You sold us right then. Dave, what are some other things happening in the life of the church that everybody needs to know about?
Yeah. First of all, for our men, we have our Man Up restarting the first Tuesday of October, and I'm really excited. We had a great turnout last spring. The guys, I felt the feedback we got was really good as far as connection, and that's what I think our guys are hungry for in our church and probably just everywhere is just more connection because we're so oftentimes isolated and living very individualistic lives. So anytime we can have a chance to be intentional with our relationship building, I think it's good. Excited to start that. And we also have Discover Grace. My wife and I love to host for our newer folks, or if anybody who's yet to go through Discover Grace and wants to, they're more than welcome as well. But we're going to start that. It's coming up. Is it this Sunday?
First, right? Yeah,
The
yeah,
20
this Sunday. This Sunday.
this Sunday. So we are really excited about that. We love talking about the vision of our church, where we've been, where we are at, where we're going, and how to help people get on board with our church family.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really excited about too, that we're gearing up for is trunk or treat. And we do that every October. And we're currently in the phase of gathering candy. So if you would like to throw a couple bucks towards buying some candy, some unwrapped, we don't need last year's candy. We need this year's candy. Nobody wants to be the church that gives away expired candy. So we're not going to do it. So find some candy, go buy some candy, and then turn it in to Jen over at Next Gen Kids. And that's a really important outreach for our church family. And for our community. It's really just one of those things that we try to, I think last year we were pushing like 1,000 people there. So it was kind of wild.
We completely ran out of candy last year. So there was no expired candy to give away, which
Right.
was great. We were running out to Walgreens buying candy at the last second when it looked like we were starting to run low.
And I'll be honest,
Insane.
as somebody who works at the church every day, I was a little bummed we didn't have extra candy lying around after Halloween, but that's just how it is. What's your guys' favorite candy? I'm curious. When you go trick-or-treating,
Reese's
What-
Pieces.
Reese Pieces?
Yeah.
Not the cups, but the Reese Pieces.
I love to take a handful of those things and by handful, I mean the whole bag and yeah.
I'm more like a Twix kind of guy. There's just no downside to caramel and cookie and chocolate and all those things together.
It's good.
Dave?
I'm a Reese Cup guy. I'm a Reese Cup guy. My kids, they know, and so they reserve those for me, which I really appreciate.
Also, I like cold Reese cups on hot s'mores.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's good life right there.
It's good. You're living the life. We could do that at Vision Night with our bonfire.
So let's talk about something that maybe a lot of church family members may not know how much we wrestle with things.
Mm-hmm.
this week, the week before, actually, as this is being recorded, was a very heavy week in the US, right? There was a lot of things going on. There was obviously the Charlie Kirk, and there was the school shooting. And then personally, there was they thought there was an active shooter at the Naval Academy. There were so many things that were just scary, heavy things. And so I'm curious from both of you guys, but Dave, we'll start with you. How do you decide what to address or not to address from the platform? Because I could imagine that there's somebody who went to our church who left and like, oh, I'm kind of surprised or maybe frustrated or that they didn't say about this.
Yeah, that's really hard. I'm glad you brought that up, Tony, but it's hard. I don't know if I have a magic algorithm to put everything through to know this is what I'm going to say and when I'm going to say it when it comes to recent events in our culture or globally. I just don't. I think I'm always prayerfully considering. I watch the news quite a bit, probably a little too much at times. I'm often aware of the things that are happening in our country, but I don't always know what is appropriate in a church setting as far as what to say and when to say it and how to say it. And so sometimes it's so fresh that I'm still processing things and I'm just not ready to talk about it yet. And there are just times where I just feel like, man, what I really want to talk about this morning has nothing to do with that. Although it's super important. I only have a half hour or so to talk with our people about something and focus in on something. And sometimes I pray through it, go, should I say something or not? And I don't really want to take away. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't always know how it's going to be taken because obviously not everyone agrees on everything when it comes to either politics or just issues in our culture right now. And it's tough. It's tough. And so, I'll be honest about the Charlie Kirk situation. I did not know who he was until the shooting
This week,
got
yeah.
reported. And I'm not on social media anymore. I'm not on Facebook or Instagram. He never popped up on my YouTube thing. So I just didn't know who he was. So that was kind of shocking to me. Like, I've never heard of this guy. How come I've not heard of this guy? He seemed pretty influential to several, a lot of people, but yeah, and I just didn't know him. I didn't, so that was an issue. I was like, I guess I gotta get to know this person a little bit before I comment on anything. And so I've watched a few videos from him and sounded like he was a Christ follower, which is great. He was also in the political world. So there was just a lot going on with him, and I'm still trying to learn who he is, to be honest. But obviously, it was such a tragedy. Yeah, and I was praying this week for just peace in our country because I know these things can be trigger points for other things. So it just broke my heart, and it's like, and I have to check my heart too because sometimes I'm so sometimes calloused from all these things because it's happened so often. And I don't want to be callous. I don't want to it's just another shooting or it's another this or another that. This is a person's life and it was really tragic, really tragic. So yeah, I don't really
Good
have
word.
great
No,
answers.
that's a good word. Dusty,
Rusty.
any thoughts from you? You got a cut dry formula that maybe could solve all of Dave's problems?
No, I can add more problems though. So, I mean, listen, Dave's right. It's really complicated sometimes to figure out what to address and the timing which it's addressed. And it's not just because what happened with Charlie Kirk was not a big moment in our nation. It was like there are those moments that feel extra heavy, I think, at times. And that might be one of those moments. But at the same time, this is where I always hesitate just a little bit. There was also the school shooting in Colorado. And then there was also the stabbing that happened. I think it was just a couple days before
Well, yeah,
that.
the Ukrainian woman on the subway.
Yeah. So the challenge, I think, from church leadership in general is if you give attention to one thing, are you giving attention equally to all the things? And we live in an information world. So we have access to every bit of bad and tragic news every single day of our lives. And there's just not, as sad as it is to say it, there's just not enough time to address everything equally that probably deserves some kind of Christian teaching. What do we know? We know that the world is a tremendously evil place. We know that there's responses that we can control. Like, what do we control, in the school shooting situation or in the stabbing situation or in the Charlie Kirk? We know that we need to pray that God's kingdom will continue to move forward. And what is our response in the face of tragedy? Like, our response is always to be hopeful. There's a little bit of extra concern as well. I do know Charlie Kirk pretty well. Just because he's been in that podcast world for a good long time, and he's been on Joe Rogan, he's been on the Pierce Morgans and all that. He's made his rounds around the circles for a long time. Even the whatever podcast I think he was on not too recently. So he kind of like hits that mix of the cultural icon along with a Christian icon to some degree, because he was an outspoken evangelical Christian, but he was also a political icon to some degree, even though he was not explicitly political. So when you've got all those things mixed together, I think the Christian world wants to come up and say, hey, this was an outspoken evangelistic kind of guy. And that was one of the worlds he lived in, but there were a lot of worlds he lived in. So all I can say is, for us as a response, we want to be able to respond to things quickly when they happen. We don't ever want to go into our worship services devoid of what's going on in the world around us. But, and this is a big capital B, but, there's also things that are really relevant for that moment that we want to make sure that we are celebrating. For us, it was a next gen kids kind of Sunday. It's really hard sometimes just practically to bring the mood down so much to talk about tragedy. Like, we're going to be able to talk about this event in particular for the next multiple years. Okay. This is going to have long ramifications, and there's a lot that we could talk about in a lot of different formats. So, was it right for Sunday morning? To some, yeah, to some, no, but like, that's just the hard part of church leadership, is trying to figure out what is right to bring relevance to the room in the moment, and what's right to maybe save for another type of conversation. And I understand from both sides. I really do. It's a hard one.
Yeah, I think one of the blessings, the kind of the unspoken blessings in this whole work that we do, is that there's always another Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to jump into the topic, because I think one of the ways that we can respond when there's tragedy in the world is exactly what we talked about this weekend, which is this idea of passing the baton to the next generation. Particularly, we talked about Gen Alpha, which, by the way, Dave, I need to tell you that my daughter was born in 2012, and she does not want to be Gen Alpha.
What does she want to be?
She wants to be Gen Z. She does not want it. She called them, what did she call them? Sticky iPadders.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because there's this vision that she has in her head of Gen Alphas were raised on iPads at dinner tables in restaurants. Like, if you wanted to go to a restaurant and you would just stick an iPad in front of a kid and go from there. So it was a fascinating lunch conversation.
Well, we'll tell her I can relate, because I'm technically a millennial, but I consider myself a Gen X, because I'm
That's funny. I always thought you were a boomer.
Ouch. Is that a good thing?
Teasing. I'm teasing.
No, because I'm born 81. I think the cutoff is 80. And I'm technically a millennial, but I do not relate with millennials. I relate way more with Gen Xers. So maybe she's just relating more with Gen Zers. That's cool. She identifies with Gen Z.
Yeah. And the truth is, she's on the bubble, right? And so those people are on the bubble are just indifferent.
Yep.
Dusty, when you think about children's ministry in churches, and, you and I both have more of a breadth of church experience in terms of locations. Dave has got some serious depth here at Centerville Grace, but you and I have some breadth. In other words, we've jumped around a little bit. So how do you...
Wide skill sets. Let's call it that. That's what
Wide
it is.
skill sets.
Wide. Yeah.
How important is children's ministry to building a movement of God?
Yeah. Easy answer. It's probably the most important. It really is. At the end of the day, it's incredibly important, because as we have seen time and time again, it is a lot of times kids that make families stick. So you want to reach the adults, you need to know how to reach the kids. We've had, I don't know how many conversations of people that have, maybe left the church or have come to our church because of what their kids want. So if their kids are involved in a youth group and they're really tied in, like, the parents are either going to let them go there on their own if they're old enough, or they're going to say, you know what, this might not be our preference, but we're going to go where my kids are plugged in, because I feel it's really important for them to get to know who God is. And that's what passing that baton to the next generation really looks like. So it's a tremendously important, and we can argue it for all the reasons. Maybe because, hey, there's churches that have really flashy kids programs that look more like amusement parks than they do anything we would call a kids ministry from our experience. But the reality is that wherever the kids go is where a lot of the parents are going to go. So you've got to figure out how to make both of those work simultaneously and in parallel. So I think every church has to have maybe not a great kids program, but at least a great way for kids to find community within themselves. So they just need to have their people there. And it doesn't matter if it's big and flashy. It really matters what the intentionality is. And as Dave talked about on the last 2 Sundays now, the impetus and the onus is on us as adults to figure out how do we create those environments where we know the kids, where they feel like they can come to church and they know who we are. They know that we're invested in them. We can give them a high five. We can tell them we're praying for them as they go to school this week. That's a huge disconnect sometimes for adults. Is a lot of times we don't want anything to do with the kids, and that's just a hard tension to manage a lot of times. So we just need to get better at that. And I think we're taking some strides and really figuring out how to do that with our kids and helping them find community.
Dave, one of the things that I think is really interesting is this idea of the next gen rebrand. It's part of a larger kind of, it almost feels like a pivot in our church where we're leaning into the next generation in a very intentional way. You've been here for 18 years, is that right?
Yes.
18 years. How do you know when it's the right time to pivot in ministry?
Good question. I think there's a combination of things where we are as a church at that moment, where we are as a culture. I think there's a lot of factors. And I think for us, it just felt right. Jen was really passionate about stepping up how many hours in a week she could give to the kids programming. And I love it when God moves in somebody's heart and passion, and especially in our leadership. It's like, oh man, all right, we can get behind this. This is exactly what we need. This is exactly how we align with disciple making. Let's get more intentional with that. And so it just felt like a right time to pull the trigger based upon where we were at as, with our Grace Kids programming and where we need to go really. And so it just felt like a good time to pivot because we have the capability. I think another factor is, do we have the capability to pivot at the moment? And suddenly now those hours increased and we were able to go, yeah, now we have
Yeah, I love that. Do we have the capability? Do we have the passion? Is it in alignment with where we feel like God is calling the larger church? And if the answer is yes on all those, then I think it's almost sinful if you don't do it, right?
Sure.
Like if
Yeah.
if we're like, yeah, we want to do this, but we're not. So I'm curious from both of you guys. One of the exercises that we did on Sunday morning that was really powerful for me was the baton exercises. We started with the future baton on one side and the past baton on the other, and we wrote names down. Names of our own kids and names of the people who have shared the faith with us. I think you mentioned Mrs. Armstrong, I think maybe is her name was.
Remember her name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, right? Like that's the power of story is that it, those special moments. Dusty, when you held those batons, what were some of the things that you thought of particularly when you held the future baton, the one that you wrote Dax and Declan's name on, or you saw my kid's name on, or Dave's kids, kids that like you're already engaged with, what were some of the feelings that kind of showed up for you in that moment?
Yeah, there are 2 words that kind of came to mind for me. One was intentionality. The other one was a requirement, probably wasn't the word, but like responsibility, I guess. Responsibility and intentionality. So we have to be intentional to reach that generation. Like every one of those names represents a life that, hopefully, if we're doing things right, that, we're discipling as we do with our kids, that they're having a relationship with Jesus, that what they're doing is going to make an eternal significance. But then we have the responsibility as a community to all these kids, right? If there's kids that walk into our building and are walking out and, aren't interacting with others in the room, they're not getting ownership, they're not seeing what, discipleship and disciple making looks like, then we're dropping the ball, right? We're dropping the baton. And that's the whole illustration. So we've got a huge responsibility to that generation. And I think it's one of those things we have to be intentional with because it doesn't always come naturally. What comes naturally to most of us is selfishness, right? I want to know what I get out of church. That's the consumer mindset. I want to make sure that, they've got the music I like and the pastor and the sermon that I like and the kids ministries that I like. And as long as I like everything, we're good. It's like the reality is, no, we have responsibility. It's not about what we like. We have to be responsible for taking all of those lives that we have in our church, and we get to steward over them for the season that we have them. So what's it look like to really be intentional in building relationships with them? And that's a challenge. Like that's a conviction to me of like, I can look around the room. There's a lot of names I didn't know on that baton, and they've probably been around at church for a while, but I don't know who they are. So that's the challenge I need to respond to.
Dave, what about you when you held the baton? I happened to see you this morning and you were holding both batons There's a lot of names, a lot of feelings. What came to mind for you?
It felt weighty to me. It felt like, man, what a responsibility. There were so many names of kids on there, and I'm like, wow. Yeah, just being able to be a good shepherd to all those kids and to the parents of those kids just felt like this is what a calling, what an opportunity we have to influence so many for the next generation.
Yeah, one of the things that really stuck out to me that I found interesting is, we have two services. Most people probably don't go to both. Everyone on this call goes to both every week. And sometimes the first service isn't as well attended as the second services. And so one of the things I noticed, and I wondered if the metaphor would continue to play out this way, is the idea that when you're not there, it's easier to drop the baton, right? Because in the first service, where there were a lot more gaps in the seating arrangements,
Yeah,
that's when we drop the baton. The drops happen in the gaps.
it's good. Yep.
And in that second service, where it was a little bit more like filled in, everybody was there. There was a lot more people in the room. I mean, probably double. I didn't look at the attendance numbers, but like, man, when you're there, kids don't fall through the cracks. When you're not there, they
Yep.
will. And that really, that was I walked away going, man, that's the extra sermon. That's the sermon that I was watching unfold in front of me from my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and almost triple, by the way, is our answer on that.
Was it almost triple?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, so I think one of the things, if you're listening to this podcast, you're definitely one of our church family member who's already committed, right? There's, you're part of our inner group. And I think all of us have this responsibility to encourage people to show up and be in the community so that the batons don't get dropped.
Yeah.
So that we can hand them off safely. Even if you're not in the teaching role of one of those kids' lives or disciple making role, just being there to help makes such a big difference.
Yeah. Just a quick text saying, "Hey, missed you this Sunday. I was looking for you, and you weren't here, so I just want to say I missed you." I think goes a long way.
When you think about Vision Night, I know that we are going to talk a little bit more about the next generation. We talked about Gen Z, we talked about Gen Alpha. Give everyone a little bit of a teaser around the vision on Wednesday night.
There's one more piece to this conveyor belt for our church that needs to be, I think, robust for us to be a thriving, healthy, impactful church in our community. And so we're going to be talking about that third piece. And I think God has really put on in my heart as of late. We got to get this right. We got to get this right. All three pieces matter, but this one is huge too. I just encourage everyone to come out. We're going to give an update on Thrive. So you don't want to miss that because we have a lot of great stuff happening. We've done a lot of great stuff. We're going to continue to do a lot of great stuff. And it's because of people's generosity. It's their faithfulness, their commitment to our church and to the vision of our church. It's the reason why we do what we do and can do what we do. So I just encourage everyone to come out and celebrate. It's really going to be a big time celebration as far as how far we've gotten to. And we're so within reach of so many things. So we want to talk about that.
So excited. I actually think that third group is like gasoline for the other two groups.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Dusty, could you tell everybody about who's preaching this weekend? Are we keeping that a secret? Or are we telling people?
Dave, are we telling people?
You know what? If we want to get into the behind the scenes stuff, I generally don't like to tell people who's preaching because I don't want people to come because of the preacher or not because of the preacher, if that's fair.
So top secret. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
You have to wait.
Yeah.
It's going to be good though. It's going to be good.
Yeah, and there's some vision in there, and there's that it will not necessarily like a normal Sunday sermon, but it's going to be really good. You're not going to miss it for sure.
Super excited. Super excited. Well, friends, that's our podcast for today. As always, we're forever thankful for you, our church family. If there's anything you can do for you, we're embarrassingly easy to find. Don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback on how you think things should be announced or what you think we should do for the next generation.
Tony at CentervilleGrace.org.
Send it to me. I'm happy to go. It's a sticky wicket, but God is good, and I'm thankful for that. So until next time, remember, no one walks alone.